The subway station hummed with a frantic, electric vibration. Thousands of commuters surged past Mark, a blurred tide of bodies and glowing screens. Eyes darted, searching for something, anything, to anchor their restless energy. Mark stood perfectly still, a stone in the middle of a rushing river. He watched the crowd. He watched the way they leaned into their devices, hungry for a distraction that never arrived. A few feet away, a man stopped, abruptly. He fumbled with a paper cup, his grip failing. The coffee hit the concrete with a sharp, wet slap. The man froze, then let out a jagged, guttural curse that cut through the station's roar. He kicked the trash can, his face twisting into a mask of sudden, sharp defeat. He was chasing a fleeting moment of comfort, and when it shattered, he crumbled with it. Mark watched the man's shoulders slump. The anger drained away, leaving only a hollow, frantic look. The crowd flowed around the man as if he were invisible. Mark turned his gaze toward the stairs, his pulse steady, his breath slow. He walked away, leaving the chaos behind. The stairs led him toward the street, but his mind drifted backward, 5 years into the past. Back then, Mark lived for the surface. He spent every waking hour curating a life that looked perfect to anyone watching. He bought expensive items to signal his worth, sought constant praise to feel valued, and retreated from every difficult conversation to keep his peace. It was a performance that never ended. He avoided the friction of reality, choosing instead the smooth, shallow path of least resistance. Yet, the cost of that curation was invisible to everyone but him. Every night, he sat in his dark apartment, staring at the ceiling, waiting for a sense of fulfillment that never came. Instead, he felt a hollow ache in his chest, a persistent, gnawing void. He was chasing a ghost, projecting an image of success while his foundation rotted from the inside. The gym air hit him like a physical blow, sharp and biting at 5 a.m. The floor was empty, save for the hum of the ventilation system. Mark stood before the rack, his muscles stiff, still carrying the fatigue of yesterday's session. His mind screamed for the warmth of his bed, for the ease of sleep, for the comfort he once spent his life chasing. He looked at the iron bar. It was cold, unyielding, and heavy. He reached out, his fingers curling around the knurled metal. His knuckles turned white as he tightened his grip. The weight pressed down on his shoulders, a crushing pressure that demanded everything he had. He took a breath, bracing his core against the strain. The world outside the gym, the anxieties, the expectations, the hollow need for validation vanished. There was only the resistance of the steel and the rhythmic, controlled intake of air. He pushed upward. The bar moved, slow and agonizing. He was no longer running from the discomfort. He was leaning into it, finding a quiet, ironclad certainty in the struggle. The weight held him, and in that hold, he was finally steady. Hours later, the office was a storm of frantic energy. A major project, the culmination of months of labor, had been rejected by the client. The news hit the floor like a shockwave. Colleagues paced the narrow aisles, their voices rising in panicked whispers as they debated the fallout. Some slumped at their desks, faces pale, eyes darting toward the door as if expecting a sudden termination. The air was thick with the scent of stale coffee and raw anxiety. Mark sat at his desk, his pulse slow and rhythmic. He did not reach for his phone to distract himself, nor did he join the chorus of complaints. He watched the others, still tethered to the fleeting highs of approval and terrified of the slightest inconvenience. He opened the feedback document on his screen. The red ink marked his errors, but he did not feel the sting of failure. He highlighted the first correction, his fingers steady on the keyboard, and began the rewrite. He did not need the situation to be perfect to function. He had built a foundation that did not rely on the shifting sands of external validation. He typed, his focus absolute, proving that his agency was no longer a gift from others, but a tool he wielded himself. The office door clicked shut behind him. Outside, the sun dipped below the skyline, painting the concrete in long, amber shadows. Mark walked toward the subway, but the frantic energy of the crowd no longer pulled at him. He felt the pavement under his boots, solid and unyielding. The wind gusted through the street, catching loose papers and sending them skittering across the asphalt. He watched them dance, tossed by every shift in the air, and recognized the version of himself he had left behind. He was no longer a leaf caught in the gale of his own emotions. He stopped at the corner, watching the city rush past, and felt a quiet, grounded stillness settle in his chest. The hunt for peace had ended. It was waiting in the strength he had forged through the fire of his own discipline. He stood still, rooted and unmoving, a fixed point in the center of the storm.